On December 4th, 2017, something deeply unsettling came to light in the quiet Nebraska countryside. Investigators stumbled upon human remains stuffed into trash bags along a gravel road about an hour west of Wilbur. The search carried into the next day, turning up even more bags scattered in different spots. Inside were body parts, clothing, and even sex toys. Before long, the remains were identified as those of 24-year-old Sydney Loof. Sydney had already been missing for a couple of weeks. Back on November 16th, her mum reported her disappearance after Sydney didn't show up for her shift at Menards. When police went to her home in Lincoln, they noticed her car still in the driveway. Inside, her eyeglasses and purse were left behind, things she'd normally never leave without. But Sydney was gone. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, yet something was clearly wrong. Investigators checked her phone records and saw it had gone completely dark the night before, on November the 15th, at exactly 8:32 p.m. Digging deeper, police traced Sydney's recent activity and discovered she'd been using Tinder. A friend confirmed that she'd recently gone on a date with a woman who introduced herself as Audrey. But Audrey wasn't real. Her name was actually Bailey Boswell. That same friend even helped police by reaching out to Bailey again, still thinking she was Audrey, and managed to get her phone number. That number turned out to be a crucial lead, helping investigators identify Bailey and tie her to an apartment in Wilbur. Sydney's first date with Bailey had been on November 14th, 2017, at the basement apartment Bailey shared with her boyfriend, Aubrey Trail. Aubrey wasn't around that night. He and Bailey had rented a hotel near the Menards where Sydney worked. While Bailey was out with Sydney, Aubrey stayed at the hotel. Things seemed to go well because the two women agreed to meet again the next day, November 15th. But before that second date, Bailey and Aubrey went on a chilling shopping trip, stopping at Home Depot, Dollar General, and even the same Menards where Sydney worked. Their purchases painted a grim picture: a hacksaw, a utility knife with extra blades, wire cutters, bleach, an air freshener, protein bars, a thermometer, lighters, food grinders, drain cleaner, and trash bags. That evening, Sydney posted a final Snapchat message: "Ready for my date." Bailey picked her up and took her to the Wilbur apartment. At some point after they got there, Bailey and Aubrey killed her. They then dismembered her body and scattered the remains along back roads outside of town. When investigators later searched the Wilbur basement apartment, they didn't find anyone home. But what they did notice was a strong, unmistakable smell of bleach. The walls looked freshly scrubbed. The landlord would later recall that on November 16th, just one day after Sydney disappeared, the smell of bleach in the apartment had been so overpowering that one of his family members actually got sick from it. By then, Bailey and Aubrey were already on the run. From the road, they recorded videos for social media, claiming the police had the wrong people and denying they had anything to do with Sydney's disappearance. On November 30th, police finally tracked Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell to a motel in Branson, Missouri. When they were arrested, it wasn't for murder just yet. Instead, they were charged with carrying stolen merchandise, a completely separate crime. But their real intentions were hard to miss. With hiking boots, maps, and sleeping bags packed up, it was clear they were planning to run. Mexico was their destination. Even with the pair behind bars, the search for the truth continued. At first, neither Aubrey nor Bailey wanted to talk. Eventually, though, Aubrey started offering up confessions, but none of them ever lined up. In one story, he claimed he alone had killed Sydney. In another, he said she died after a third date with Bailey. Then, he switched it up again, saying her death happened during a sexual fantasy that spiraled out of control, caused by accidental choking. Later still, he gave yet another version, that he had been alone with Sydney and her death was an accident. The details kept changing, but investigators zeroed in on one part that couldn't be denied. Aubrey knew where Sydney's things were. He led police straight to a Wilbur cemetery, where they uncovered her phone, driver's license, and credit card, buried exactly where he said they'd be. As detectives pieced the case together, more about Aubrey and Bailey's backgrounds came out. Aubrey Clifton Trail was born on September the 7th, 1966. His childhood was rough, full of abuse and bouncing around foster homes. By his teen years, he'd already committed armed robbery and done time in prison. As an adult, his rap sheet grew. forgery, driving offences and other crimes. By 2017, he was living in that same basement apartment in Wilbur. Bailey Boswell's life looked very different, but ended up colliding with Aubrey's. She was born on February 26, 1994, almost 30 years younger than him. Raised in Iowa, Bailey's early life was marked by tragedy when her father was murdered during her childhood. Despite that, she excelled in sports, even landing a basketball scholarship offer. But instead of chasing that future, she got caught up in drugs and ended up with charges for drug paraphernalia. She later married a man named Freddie Pennell, and together they had a daughter. Living in Missouri, their substance use eventually cost them custody of the child. Afterward, Bailey started looking online for a sugar daddy. That's how she met Aubrey Trail. By May 2018, months after Sydney's remains had been found, the two pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges, admitting they had conned a Kansas couple out of $375,000. A month later, the charges everyone had been waiting for finally came: first-degree murder and improper disposal of human remains. In early 2019, things escalated further. Aubrey was hit with an additional charge of conspiracy to commit murder in February, and Bailey faced the same charge 6 months later. Both maintained their innocence. In June 2019, Aubrey admitted to the improper disposal charge, but still denied murder and conspiracy. Then, during a tense courtroom session that month, he stunned everyone, suddenly yelling, "Bailey was innocent, and I curse you all," before dragging a sharp piece of metal across his own neck, believed to be part of a razor blade. Aubrey was rushed to the hospital after that courtroom incident. Luckily, he survived. Even without his dramatic outburst, the evidence against him and Bailey was overwhelming. Cell phone records showed their devices near Sydney's at key moments. Surveillance footage connected them to buying bleach, hacksaws and trash bags in the days leading up to the murder. The Wilbur apartment reeked of bleach, a clear sign they had tried to clean up. On top of that, 3 women testified that Aubrey and Bailey had openly talked about wanting to record the torture and murder of victims, planning to sell the videos for profit. And of course, Aubrey had confessed repeatedly, even if his stories didn't always match. By July 2019, Aubrey Trail was convicted of murder and conspiracy. Bailey Boswell followed in October 2020, convicted on all charges. Sentencing came the next year. In June 2021, Aubrey was handed the death penalty, and in November 2021, Bailey was sentenced to life in prison.